Hello, my name is Joseph Matthews, and I'm presenting on the effective ways to measure success of corridors for black bears. So as the world gets more and more developed, a common problem that large mammals, especially animals such as bears, are encountering is the habitat is becoming much more fragmented, and a common way people are going about to sort of help this problem is by introducing corridors. I provided a picture of sort of an example of what I'm thinking of when I say corridor in the bottom center of my presentation. Um, so a corridor is defined as a linear feature with the purpose of connecting two larger habitat pieces together. This can be anything from a line of trees between two patches of forest that birds can fly through, to a 3 mile wide patch, well, not patch, a corridor, connecting two much larger landscapes and potentially populations. For the sake of this project, I'm just going over smaller man-made corridors because it's typically what people are measuring for. If you're spending the money to sort of make these things, you want to make sure they're successful. So I did 3 different techniques. The first one is camera traps. The pros of camera traps are they provide more data than just the targeted species. You'll get pictures of more than just bears. You can sort of see the corridors may be helping more than just bears. Camera traps rarely have adverse effects on wildlife, and these cameras can be used effectively without bait. Baiting near a road is generally a bad idea. So the cons of camera traps, analyzing the data can take a long time because there are so many pictures to sift through. They can be damaged or stolen, especially near areas where there's high human activity. And these traps are pretty ineffective near a road, just because you could potentially get pictures of a million cars going through the road. The second technique that I looked at were hair snares. This is really common in bears. It's sort of, you just kind of put some barbed wire around bait, and it will, hopefully the bears will run into it and some of their hair will get trapped. The pros of this is it can be used for individual data. So you can look at DNA samples and sort of figure out what individual bears are going through, and if it's only one bear going through, but it's going through every time, like every single day, you'll know. And the bait choices can narrow down the species, so you can sort of hone in on just bears. The cons are can damage the bears. You'll usually need bait. Bears will typically avoid barbed wire if there's no reason to go towards it. And the bait can skew the data because you could get bears that are coming just for the bait and not because they actually want to go through the habitat. And then the final technique that I looked at were sand print traps. And this is basically you get a soft substance, usually sand, you lay it down in an area, and then animals will walk across it, and you will be able to identify them based off their tracks. The pros of this are it can be used in narrow corridors, such as the ones used to cross roads, because you can sort of cover the entire corridor and know exactly what is crossed. You can also set up controls, so you can put, little sand pits near the road to see if there are bears crossing the road and not even using the corridor. So it's good for setting up sort of a control. The cons is the identification is very reliant on you knowing animal tracks. You don't want to study bears and then be confusing coyote tracks with bear tracks. And then obviously bad weather can really sort of hinder your ability to identify tracks. So after considering all of this, my recommendation for the best to study corridor effectiveness is sand traps. This is because, it doesn't potentially harm the bears. You're not luring it to a roadside. You can somewhat get it to just narrow down on bears. You're not going to get pictures of birds or anything like that. And also is you can create a control. So when you're trying to measure effectiveness, a huge part of that is being able to see, well, okay, there's 5 bears going through the corridor, but there's also 10 bears that are crossing the road. So that is my thought on which is best. I'm going to remove my picture so you can see the references. Without them, this project would be very difficult to have done. So thank you. And please remember to ask any questions you need to.